I'm Darcy D, your virtual voice coach, and in today's webinar, we are going to take a closer look at vocal registers. If your voice cracks, flips, strains, or suddenly feels unpredictable, it's not because something is wrong with your voice. It's because your voice is changing registers. And learning to balance the coordinations throughout your register is key. Today, I want to clear up the confusion around chest, head, mix, and falsetto without buzzwords, without myths, and without forcing anything. Once you understand registers, singing starts to feel logical instead of frustrating. Now, I encourage everybody here, if you have questions, to put them in the chat. And as usual, we'll get to them. I know that a lot of you here already understand what we're talking about today, and that's all right. Maybe there'll be a little nugget of something you've never heard before. Oh, and I wanted to make notice, one of our usual suspects that attends these webinars, Sterling Adder, probably won't be here today because his wife just had their first child. Yay, right? So congratulations to them. And they're in Florida, so enjoying their son. And that was kind of exciting news. So we wish them well. So what vocal registers actually are is a key for singers. This sort of unlocks what you do with your voice. A vocal register isn't a place you sing from, it's a coordination. Now, registers describe how your vocal folds behave at different pitches and intensities. Dynamics, more volume, etc. Your voice isn't switching modes to sabotage you, it's adapting to mental demands for pitch movement, higher ascending or lower descending. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down simply so we can understand. What I have here is a picture of the voice types and their transitions. And if I was to zoom in a little bit here, you could see this is the bass register. Now, the transition is around E flat 3 to G3, somewhere in here. And that means that from this note lower would be the range of a bass singer. This would be chest voice register. And from the top of your mixed voice here to here is about the range of head voice. So as you can see in a bass singer, we're approximately 2/3 chest voice, 1/3 head voice, this being the mixed area, the mixed voice register. And in the baritone, the mixed voice register is a little bit higher than the bass, and the chest voice register comes down not quite as low as a bass singer, thus baritone. And you can see the upper voice or the head voice register is a little bit higher. Now, in the tenor voice, we have a mixed range of E flat 4 to about G4. I want to point out that you can see here it's E flat 3 to G3 for the bass and E flat 4 to G4 for the tenor. A little bit of mathematical dynamics going on there. The range of a tenor is typically about B2 to C5 comfortably. Notice again, 2/3 of the entire range of a tenor singer is about 2/3 chest voice and 1/3 head voice again. Now, the alto, which is the female tenor, shares the same transition or mixed voice register as a tenor, and the lower register doesn't go as low, and the upper register doesn't go as high. So the alto is kind of in the middle. If you look at the proportion of chest voice to head voice in a tenor, it's primarily chest voice. With an alto, it's almost equidistant, the range of an alto. The mix is almost smack dab in the middle. And then with the soprano, here we notice that the same thing occurs with the mix being almost in the middle, but the range is a little bit higher. So we can go to C6 in a soprano and down to an A3. So now this is important because this is the vocal registers, and in this we see where mixed tone is, which means this is where you would find your transition and any voice type challenges you may or may not have. They're going to happen in the transition. Now, when we look at a diagram of the vocal folds, this is looking down your throat. So the vocal folds sit like this horizontally over the windpipe, and they sit in the larynx. The larynx is what houses the vocal folds. Now, in chest voice, we have a thicker vocal cord engagement or thicker vocal fold engagement. And we're using primarily the thyroarytenoid muscle. That's this big, long muscle here, right, on both sides. And that produces a solid connection in the voice. And using this muscle, we get a slower rate of vibration, which is measured in hertz. And we get this, of course, in the lower register or chest voice register. The TA, or the thyroarytenoid chest voice muscle, is the primary muscle used in chest voice. It is the muscle that forms the main mass of the vocal folds, responsible for shortening and relaxing them to lower pitches. So the anatomy runs all the way from the front to the rear of the larynx here. Next, I'm going to introduce you to the LCA, or the lateral cricoarytenoid muscle. This muscle is the vocal fold adductor or closer, and you can see it sitting right here. And this muscle is responsible for bringing those vocal cords together. It acts independently from all other vocal cord muscles. So the LCA muscle is sort of a solo artist, if you will. The posterior cricoarytenoid muscle is the muscle that opens the vocal folds, and that's this muscle right here. So we have muscle function to open and muscle function to close, muscle function to shorten, to make thinner, and this all happens and this all approximates on the fly as we activate the mental demand to sing. Now the CT muscle, or the cricothyroid muscle, that's this muscle here. And when we go from chest voice lower notes through the transition into head voice, this cricothyroid muscle is activated. We call this the high voice muscle. It's a two-part muscle system that adjusts vocal cord length and allows us to experience those higher notes. Damage or abuse to this muscle will result in hoarseness or the ability for a singer to produce higher pitches in the upper register. Connected tone head voice requires more TA muscle involvement than pure falsetto. So if I'm singing, there's very, very little thyroarytenoid muscle involved there. And when I go, more of that muscle is used to give us a thicker vocal cord system in that upper register. Now, falsetto can be developed and strengthened by better coordination of the adductor, the LCA muscle. So when we're singing, in order to go into falsetto, that LCA muscle has to approximate so that the vocal cords are barely closing in the vibratory pattern. So as I go from connected to falsetto, connected, falsetto, you can hear the difference. Connected, falsetto, you can almost hear the breath flowing, right? Now, likewise, lower notes of the piano are bigger, longer strings. Those lower frequencies are more easily activated, just like they are in the voice. When I press a low note on the piano, without a sustain pedal, it sustains for quite some time. When I come up near the top of the piano and do the same thing, even if I press on the sustain pedal, it's not sustaining easily. So in order to activate this sound on the piano even, I have to strike it again and again. So if I was to go to mixed voice, with the sustain pedal, it sustains nicely. Even without a sustain pedal, it sustains nicely. So with the voice, how this correlates is when I'm using chest voice muscle and I'm singing in my lower register, It seems to vibrate quite easy. When I go to a higher placement in my head voice, I feel a little bit more tension. There's more natural tension in part of the size and shape of the vocal cords changing. There's more natural tension, the cords are smaller, and I have to provide the breath flow to activate those cords. The vibration of chest voice, as we've already learned, is in chest itself. That's the area. It's that sympathetic resonance. The size and shape of the vocal cords when we sing in lower notes resonates in chest voice. Mixed voice is the coordinated balance of the TA, the CT, and the LCA muscle groups, all working together to approximate the sounds that we want to create from mental demand for pitch and shape. Falsetto is an incomplete closure. It's a stylistic tool, but it's not your enemy. We don't use falsetto a lot in training unless we're working stylistically on that sound. But in general, we want to be able to coordinate the voice from our lowest to our highest notes and have ease and access to each and every note. So when we go into head voice, we want it to be and if we have to flip into falsetto, it's going to be different. So in training, we want to have that connection to develop the transition to build a bridge over this so I can blend my lower voice chest register and my higher voice head voice register. So key muscles are used in the falsetto. The CT muscle tilts the thyroid cartilage forward, the vocal cords lengthen and thin, we get higher pitches. If we wanted to get a more connected sound in head voice, the TA muscles have to be involved a little bit more because they're typically inactive or relaxed in falsetto. So if I'm the chest voice muscle isn't as active, it's quite relaxed. And if I wanted to put some weight into that, I would have to engage the TA muscle a little bit more. So we learn to activate that muscle a little bit more in exercise. And it's the opposite of how they would function for chest voice. In falsetto, only the edges of the cords vibrate. The vocal cords appear to be longer and stiff with more tension, but it's just that amount of close that we get. One of the most overlooked voice registers for me, simply because I can't do it, is the whistle tone. The highest of vocal registers, achieved by activating a small portion or edge of the vocal cords with highly compressed airstream, and this produces the whistle. The key is to provide, not push airflow during this activation. So it's the whistle tone is the rarest of correctly executed vocal sounds because the difficulty level is off the charts. This register is above falsetto. There are many singers who can squawk the high notes in that register, but few develop the ability to whistle in tune fluently. There's two registers that I haven't mentioned yet, and one of them is vocal fry. And vocal fry is that loose glottal pressure and low frequency vibration happens in your lowest of lowest registers. So it just kind of crackles along. There's not a lot of solid connection. The distance between each vibration of the chord is greater, and it's a low glottal frequency. Now I use the vocal fry to help singers determine what the status of their voice is. If you can do a vocal fry, then you know that your vocal cords are in pretty decent shape. If you attempt to do a vocal fry and it sounds like that means the vocal cords are slightly swollen. Could be from an illness you just recovered from, a lot of coughing, a lot of excessive pressure on the vocal folds, or it could be from overuse, and that's a sign that it's time to step back and reset. And in doing that, you have that fry as a tool. We can also use fry when we're engaging in certain exercise types to find certain positions where we're not really squeezing those vocal cords together as they adduct. And we can use the fry to loosen that and just find the connection. It helps us to grow our range. It helps us to navigate the transition. And there's many different ways you can come about that. The most common voice type that known to man is the one we all use, and we're very good at it. If you can speak, you use the vocal register modal. Modal is the most common voice phonation. It simply means speech level. I am speaking in modal register right now. And this is where I speak. And again, the sound and the frequencies I produce as a speaker are based simply on the size and shape of my body. And that depicts the size and shape of my vocal folds. And then when I activate them into vibration, it's in chest voice. So we speak in chest voice. And I think that's why for most singers, finding chest voice as a singer in a sustained speech form is the easiest thing to do. And learning to navigate that through the transition and into head voice register is the most difficult thing to do, because we as speakers don't spend a lot of time up here, right? Unless you get really excited or mad, and then you automatically raise that pitch to that register. So why, this is a question I get asked a lot, why does my voice crack? Why does my voice flip or strain? Now, cracks don't happen because you're untrained. They happen when one coordination can't handle the pitch anymore. So I guess I could retract that first line too, because it does mean it's untrained, right? It's unconditioned. When we're in one coordination and we go to another one that we are, say, unfamiliar with, we might crack. Most singers pull chest voice too high because it feels powerful, and male rock singers are as guilty as charged on this, because they want to feel that. They want to have that connection for big, strong, high notes. They stretch that until the voice has no choice but to flip and or squeeze. So cracking and flipping isn't failure. It's your voice protecting itself, or it's just, I've never done this dance move before. Right? So the goal isn't to eliminate registers, it's to coordinate them. If you think about it, that's all we're doing. We're coordinating the use of your voice with the muscle groups you use to engage your voice, so that we can stay connected from bottom voice to top voice through the transition. And that transition tells us what kind of singer we are: a bass, a baritone, a tenor, an alto, a soprano, mezzo, whatever it is. And then knowing where your transition is allows us to engage the correct exercises to build balance and strengthen the voice. So seemingly, blenders, for example, the transition is gone. There's been a bridge has been built, and it's activated all the registers, the working registers within that singer's register. Does that register? Now, there's some myths that keep singers stuck. You don't find mix, you build it, right? So we know where where we have to mix by finding where the transition is, where we pull chest. That would be your transition. That would be the top of your chest voice. Where we flip, either right in the middle of the transition or just coming into head voice, right? So we have to build that. And for chest pullers, that means we need to release to the point where we can balance into the transition. For flippers, we need to find more engagement and balance so we can navigate through the transition. Another myth is that if an exercise works for someone else, it might not work for you yet. Most exercises used for singers are common. They're based on the scales, right? A little bit of music theory. We walk through the scales in different little sequences. Everything is tuned to the piano, so everything we do with the voice becomes habituated to the piano. So if an exercise works for someone else, it means they have coordinated that part of their voice for that exercise to work. It may not work for you yet. And registers are mechanical. They're mechanical and psychological. So it's the mechanics of how the voice works and getting the brain out of the way so we can do the things we need to do based on our voice type to build that balance, to give us the freedom, to memorize the scale, to be able to stylize, riff, and run, and go to higher notes with ease and be able to connect them or release them so they're beautiful and dramatic. So that's the psychological part. As singers, we do have to be able to identify with different emotional circumstances. So when we sing the lyrical content, we can emotionalize that to tell the story. That in turn feeds the rules of the exercises you've habituated into practice. And then if you need to be strong and big with your voice, you can be. If you need to be light and delicate, you can be. It's psychological and mechanical. So that's why sometimes, and quite often more than not, exercise doesn't sound good, right? And it's not until we start to stylize these approaches and typically add lyric to it that we can add the physiological state of it and design it to be more emotional and pretty, etc. Most confusion for singers comes from trying to skip steps. So we have a chest voice, for example. We have a modal voice. We start to sustain that, and now we have to sing songs where we're required to get through that transition and get into head voice. If we don't train our way through this, we're skipping steps, and we're going to be confused. We're going to be straining. We're going to be flipping. So that chest voice heavy sound that we have, we always find the strain point. And in exercise, we do something called a 5-tone scale, and we put a wide vowel on it, and it reveals the transition. So that in turn helps us determine where our registers are, where the chest voice ends and where the mix begins and where the head voice begins, etc. So as we move our way through, and we can start to build the appropriate exercises to help us navigate that. So in chest voice, as we ascend from the bottom, would be a chest puller. So that TA muscle, that chest voice muscle, is being utilized, and it's not being relaxed toward the transition. So we're starting to pull that chest voice muscle. Contrary to that, if we release that chest voice muscle too soon and that head voice muscle doesn't engage, that CT muscle, when we get that flip sound, and our voice goes from strong and connected to thin and wimpy, and that would be a flip voice singer. And of course, the blended voice singer is the goal for every singer. From bottom to top to bottom, we've built a bridge. We don't feel that transition anymore. We have connected our registers. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Notice that when you're singing in a blended voice, notice that the sound stays consistent, even as the coordination changes. So we want that, and this is why sound choice matters more than range when training registers. So we want that blended coordination to be balanced. And I sometimes say this to people I'm working with. Try to balance the output of the sound. Keep the volume the same. So when we go from bottom to top, we keep that volume the same. We anchor on the bottom and we get to the top note. You can increase the volume, and it should stay near the same in exercise. So it's somewhat undynamic, but it's encouraging us to keep the balance. right? Now, there are cases, the higher you go, where you're going to have to release a little bit more to keep that connection, and the volume may change. But again, if you're thinking about balancing it, you're going to be training in a more balanced fashion. And then there'll be a time and a place where we throw all those rules aside and we sing songs. So knowing where your transition is enables you to train more register appropriate and select songs or song keys that are suitable to your voice. And this is a big one for any singer, really. But new singers or people new to training the voice in a sustained fashion, it's finding, where your transition is so you know where to play songs. For example, if you wanted to sing, like a Justin Timberlake or Adam Levine, where they use that edgy or falsetto sound, you have to put it in the part of your registers that is appropriate to that sound. Because if it's too low, you won't be able to find that sound very easily. And if it's too high, you're going to be past the point. And it's going to be all thin. So knowing where your transition is will help you appropriate that. And knowing what key the song is in and what key is suitable for your voice type is another big one. Quite often, if I run into singers that want to sing a song that's just so far out of their comfort zone, and it either needs to be so low that the verses disappear, or it has to be high enough that we can't get to the chorus, and then the verses are comfortable. So possessing this knowledge about your voice provides clues. Now, these exact exercises in multiple sound choices, they're live inside the Virtual Voice Coach app, and you can revisit them safely because if you know what your voice type is, the routines and the exercises are designed specifically to help you balance through your register, right? So when we need to learn how to train the registers correctly, we need to remove chest dominance if you're a chest puller. We need to allow for head-voice coordination. We need to train in the balance, both on the approach, on the connection, and on the release. So we can navigate. Once you can navigate that transition, it doesn't matter how high or low you can sing. If you can balance through the transition and you've built a bridge, you can apply that to song, because there's ways to change the melody and the key to accommodate your voice type, make it more comfortable. You don't strengthen your registers by forcing them. You strengthen your registers by organizing them. And that's important. Let that sink in. Don't strengthen your registers by forcing them. You strengthen them by organizing them. If you know where the top of your chest voice is, if you know where the bottom of your head voice is, you know where your mixed place is, your mixed voice, where you're blending, and you'll know how to navigate that. Now, here's another thing that I run into quite often, and it's why random practice doesn't work. Most singers practice hard, few singers practice correctly. And the problem isn't effort, it's sequencing. It's knowing what to do, when to do it, and then how to do it. That's why generic online exercises often fail. You have a singer who can sing amazingly, and they're telling you what works for them, and they're showing you exercises that work for them, and then you go to attempt it, and everything falls apart. So it just means that your voice isn't in the same level of training as theirs is, right? So watching someone demonstrate this beautiful exercise, and then you go to replicate it, and it doesn't work. That can be very deflating, and so you have to understand what your voice is doing, why it's doing it, and then provide the correct exercise. Eventually, you'll do all the exercises, because eventually you'll become a blended voice singer or mixed voice singer, and eventually you'll be able to put weight through all parts of your register, and then you'll be able to do the things that these other singers are doing. If today's topic provided things that click for you, as always, I ask that you give it a like, follow, and share, because it's appreciated. You can find structured registered training, guided routines, and clear explanations of everything I'm talking about in the Virtual Voice Coach app. You'll be training smarter with more understanding so you can sing for yourself.